Welcome back to News Stalker on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Bob Green along with Stephen Williams, Eric Maximilian Hendrick, and we are talking tonight with Mr. Richard Gage AIA, who's founding member of the Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. Again, Mr. Gage, very honored to have you at the head of our classroom this evening. We do try to instruct, and who better to talk about buildings falling down than an architect? And I want you, if you can, to expand a little bit as we begin this new segment with what the official story was, not only of the collapse of World Trade Center Towers 1 and 2, but also Building 7, and what characteristics there were in those buildings falling that we had never had a president before. It never happened before. We've had hotter fires. I guess start with their narrative and then pick it apart if you can on the building collapses.
Sure. In the case of the Twin Towers, we're told that we, of course, have jet plane impacts with some damage, but that damage to the building was insufficient, according to NIST, in the official story, to bring the building down. These are very, very strong buildings, and the planes had not insignificant, but a very small effect on the collapse. What they say is that the structural steel succumbed to the heat of the fires, softening steel and weakening the structure at the point of jet plane impacts. And then at that point, that in the case of the North Tower, we have about 12 stories above the point of jet plane impacts, which due to that incredible weight drove the rest of the building down to the ground in a pancaking style collapse with a pile driver. It's called a column failure theory. The columns having failed, perimeter columns, due to being pulled in by the sagging trusses, floor trusses. There are so many problems with this theory. What I will point your listeners to at this point, though, is that all of the videos and the photos, which, by the way, can be seen on our website, which is ae911truth.org. That's ae911truth.org. Our videos are on the left side of that website, and there's so much evidence there that people can really learn quite a bit in a short period of time. But we do not have in the first 4 seconds. In the first 4 seconds, what we do have is more similar to Building 7. It's an implosion. In other words, the upper 10 stories or 12 are being destroyed in what can only be find a miniature controlled demolition. That block of buildings, which we're told drove the rest of the tower down, is not even there after 4 seconds. It is not seen in any video, in any photograph, after 4 seconds. There is nothing left but a loose, shattered structure to drive the rest of the building down. It is not available to do such. What we do see instead is what the first responders reported, which we became aware of in August of 2005, when their oral histories were released to us, which revealed 118 of these first responders testifying as to explosions, a massive series of synchronized explosions, like a belt, many of them said, wrapping all the way around the building, all these explosions. And this was hidden from us, by the way, these oral histories, by the city, but the New York Court of Appeals forced them to release this material. And the New York Times reported it. And many of them saw flashes of light at the point of jet plane impacts and down below throughout the building. Flashes of light, sounds of explosions, and yet none of these explosions, and there's hundreds of them when you add up all the witnesses down below, the newspaper reporters, etc., not one of them appear in the official reports. And that's true for Building 7, even though we have dozens of witnesses of explosions at the onset of destruction of that tower as well. But after 4 seconds, when this upper portion is destroyed, we have a massive series of explosions which are heard by these guys, but which are seen in the videos as well, ejecting laterally at 60 miles an hour, these heavy structural steel sections. Now, gravity works down, not out. In this case, we have the lateral ejection up to 600 feet in every direction, such that the entire contents of this building, most all of it, maybe 98% of it, is well outside the perimeter of each building. Now, that's not gravity. Gravity would give us a pile of 20 or 30 or 100 floors in each, at the footprint of each of these buildings, which would be certainly mangled. But in midair, the concrete in those floors is instead pulverized to a fine powder, 100 microns, most of it, and some gravel, of course. There is no stack of floors found at the base of either of these towers. It is a two-story pile of core columns, perimeter columns, and other debris. Where are all the floors in what is supposed to be some form of a pancaking collapse? That is a huge problem for the official story. The lateral ejection of structural steel elements, the mid-air pulverization of 90,000 tons of concrete, the incredible heat produced in the pyroclastic-like snow clouds that trail these laterally ejected structural steel elements. These squibs, or isolated explosive ejections that are fired off throughout the building up to 60 stories below the zone of destruction, pancaking, destruction as we're told. These are expelled at 160 to 200 feet per second, many of them. And they're full of pulverized building materials. They're not ejections of air produced by this piston-like upper block, which is pushing air down the elevator shafts. If that were the case, we'd have all of the windows on a given floor being blown out, not just these highly focalized, pinpoint, accurate, violent ejections that we see in the videos. So, as if that weren't enough, the blanket of powdered concrete from river to river not only contains the residue of thermite, but the residue of unignited thermite. The ignited thermite residue is found in these iron microspheres, which we discussed earlier, found by officials of the USGS and R.J. Lee, unexplained, completely unexplained, up to 10 tons of that. But also in the dust, a small team of scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen find in their 4 independently collected samples the same curious small red-gray chips. And these chips come up to a magnet. They have a heavy iron content, which is really curious, but they zoom into it and they find extremely small particles, iron oxide and aluminum powder. And these are the ingredients of thermite. They're found in the exact proportion to become thermite, about 3/4 iron oxide, 1/4 aluminum. They're set in an organic bed of oxygen, silica, and carbon. This is amazing because here you have an incendiary, which is at, these particles are so small, by the way, they're nanoscale. They're built from the atomic scale up, a very sophisticated form of thermite, especially when set in this oxygen, silica, and carbon bed, which gives it the gassing expansion, which make a thermite more explosive. So this is a very sophisticated product made only in the most advanced defense contracting laboratories. And so what they have done, this team of scientists, is document this in a peer-reviewed paper in the Bentham Open Chemical Physics Journal, which stands uncontested for over 2 years now. The way to contest somebody's so-called conspiracy theory is to put up a paper of your own documenting how ludicrous something is or what its weak points are. This has not been done. There's no published paper challenging this work. There's just people who hand wave and say, oh, that's just paint. But paint does not have these exotic properties. So we have a real effort on the part of officials at NIST, government, and the media, and idiots like Michael Shermer of the International Skeptics Society and Popular Mechanics, basically trying their best to say, oh, don't listen to these conspiracy theorists, that they don't make any sense. But none of them have systematically taken on, point by point, our evidence and come up with any explanation that makes any sense, other than that these towers, all 3 of them, were brought down by thermite, in the case of the Twin Towers, nanothermite, and probably more higher energy explosives, which would be more responsible for the lateral ejection of these massive steel elements.
And we're coming up on the top of the hour break, Mr. Gage. And we will continue. We've got a few more questions regarding the collapse of the building, and we certainly want to find, a two-point question, where you think this is going to go from here, giving you some food for thought as we come up on our break, and what our listeners can do to help to support your organization, Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth.